Good evening. Welcome to the Tales from a Safe Distance After Party. We hope you enjoyed the second episode of our world premiere and that you and those you love are well. I'm Tales co-creator and composer of The Happy Hour, Peter Hilliard, just outside of Philadelphia.
And I'm Tales co-creator and Happy Hour librettist, Matt Baresi in Chicago. Before we get the party started, I want to remind you that the ticket that you purchased for tonight's episode also entitles you to unlimited on-demand watching of all 4 episodes of Tales from a Safe Distance. So if you haven't yet seen episode 1, you can go back and do that. You will see Luca Pizzaroni featured in The Happy Hour with a singer from each of the 10 chapters. You can also see Lyric Opera of the North, delightful Everything Comes to a Head, which exists in a beautiful painterly watercolor environment. And you will see Bear Opera's The Late Walk, which exists using some augmented reality technology. So if you haven't seen episode 1 yet, please do watch it. You can watch this episode again, and certainly it bears watching again as many times as you'd like here. And next Friday, we premiere episode 3, So Noble a Heart. And on the 30th, we have the 4th world premiere as well. And once they're all up, they're up. And you can make yourself a meal, pour some alcohol, watch all 4 episodes in one pull and see how it holds together as a complete work. Watching again as many times as you'd like here. And next Friday, we premiere episode 3, So Noble a Heart. And on the 30th, we have the 4th world premiere as well. And once they're all up, they're up. And you can make yourself a meal, pour some alcohol, watch.
Well, great. Let's hear from the companies. Let's let's start with Fargo Moorhead. Let's start with David. Would you introduce yourself? Say who you are.
I will. I'm David Hamilton. I'm the general director from the opera, and I also played the role in our Dinner for Three. And I'm currently in Fargo. Yeah, sure, you bet you know.
Go ahead.
And I can introduce our team to you. Let's see. First on my screen here is Michael Ching, our composer. Michael is currently living in Ames, Iowa, and I was so pleased that he was able to do this work for us. Next on my screen is Deborah Bavort, our librettist. Deborah is, let's see, you're in New Jersey, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And so Michael and Deborah have never actually been in the same place at the same time. So, and, you know, this pandemic certainly has sparked some creativity, hasn't it?
Sure.
And then Kate Jackman, who played the cheating wife, is one of our former young artists, the Gate City Bank young artists, who has been back with us 2 or 3 times to sing leading roles. And so I was so glad she was able to fit us in to her schedule.
Marvelous. Thank you, David. I think next we want to hear from Bob Wood, who is the head honcho over at Urban Arias. Would you introduce your clan over there, Bob?
Absolutely. Great to meet everybody. I'm Bob Wood. I'm the executive and artistic director of Urban Arias. We have our dream team of Mark Migo Cortez, composer, and John de los Santos, librettist, and also director of this piece. And our fabulous 3 singers, Sharon Apostolou and Ryan McPherson, both in the same screen, approved. They are in the same pod. And Emily Pulley, newly mezzo-soprano.
Marvelous. Well, thank you so much for contributing these 2 new and really very special operas to this project. I really think these operas in particular have a future in the repertory. I really would love to see what they would look like on the stage. And to our audience, we want to hear from you. Submit your questions for tonight's guests at the Decameron Opera Coalition Facebook page, Instagram, or Twitter. And we've got people who will help us pass along those questions to our guests.
You're muted, Matt.
I sure am. All right. I have a question for the producers, the general directors. I'm going to ask David, and then I'm going to ask Bob. But David, now I know that Fargo Moorhead has done new works in the past. Recently, you've done 3 Decembers. You've done Michael Ching's Speed Dating Tonight. I don't know that you are typically in the business of world premieres and commissions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is quite a complicated process to jump into if you don't regularly commission things. So how's it been?
Well, it has been a learning curve. This is our actual first commission, although it's not our first world premiere. We did a world premiere of the Poe Project, 2 one-act operas based on the stories of Edgar Allan Poe. And that's how we found Deborah back in 2014. But that commission was done by American Lyric Theater in New York. So this is the first time that we have done both a commission and a premiere. And basically, I just called Michael and Deborah, said, "Okay, does this work for you? How does this work? And can we do it in 3 weeks?"
And so we haven't all turned you off to the concept forever. Is this the first and last commission, or?
Oh heck no! I think it'd be loads of fun. I mean, there's still 90 stories in the Decameron we can choose from. So I think it'd be loads of fun to keep going. And we do actually have a commitment to producing 21st century opera every year. So in addition to this one this year, we're also planning to do Patterson's 3-Way in the spring. So and we figure we can distance that. So we're not doing the orgy scene, just the rest of it.
Really have a thing for 3-Ways up there in Fargo.
There you go, exactly, 3-Ways, totally.
Well, Bob Wood, you are very much in the business of world premieres. So tell me how this process has differed from past commissions and in process, and do tell us if you have anything coming up that we should know about.
For sure. This is our 7th commission and our 11th world premiere in our 10 years of existence. This was different because it was on film. Obviously, we'd never done that before, and I am so grateful to both of our authors and our whole cast for really rolling with all the punches on that, because it was new to all of us. In particular, I would say John did an excellent job of not just writing the libretto, but also storyboarding it. We signed him on as director, and so he knew exactly how he was going to shoot and from what angle. He was so very efficient and organized in the process, and that was such a help because we only shot it over 2 days. Similarly, Mark was really sensitive to the needs of a short thing. It's just funny. I mean, we've never done anything truly this short before. I mean, our motto is opera short new, but we typically mean by that between 60 and 90 minutes. So 13 was a little bit of a stretch, but I knew that John had done such a terrific job with his short opera Service Provider, which was a big hit when we did it, and also that other company across the river. And and so I knew this was going to be a big success. We have another digital project coming up in the spring called Driving While Black by Roberta Gumbel and Susan Kander, starring Karen Slack. And we're excited to make that. And boy, do we know a lot more about that now than we did when we started this.
Marvelous.
Fantastic. That's so interesting. So both of these scores are beautifully orchestrated with all kinds of wonderful color in them. They're 2 very different pieces, but speaking as a composer, I had a lot of envy for these textures and these colors and these sounds, the soundscape. And I wonder, both of you are established, experienced composers. Is writing for this kind of a setup different for you? Maybe we could start with Michael. How is this different from writing for a conventional opera?
Well, we had obviously the recording session first, and then one of the scary things about that is you had to get it right. I mean, David, we never really talked about this. We had to make 100% commitment. I couldn't come back to Fargo and go, "Oh, let's change that 8 bars." And so that was a little bit scary compared to a live situation where you usually overwrite a little bit. You probably can both relate to this. You overwrite a little bit so that you can kind of cut something out. But this situation, we just had to kind of nail it. And even with Deborah, there was like 1 bar where we weren't too sure what to do, and there was a lot of back and forth even in that 1 bar between the director and David and Deborah and myself about what to do. And fortunately, that worked out. And the musicians in Fargo were terrific and very enthusiastic. And as David mentioned earlier, our violinist had just had a baby herself, and she did not come to the the actual recording session, she overdubbed later. And so she was, and when I heard it for the first time, it's like, wow. That was a very different as well.
Wow, that's amazing. So, Mark, I just want to turn to you. Your score is so lush and beautiful, and there's so many wonderful ideas. Did you approach this differently, knowing it would be virtual, than you would if you were writing for, a live situation?
Well, definitely. I have to say, first of all, this is actually my first opera.
Oh, wonderful.
So it was
Whoa!
actually an
Bravo.
incredible opportunity for me, and a learning process that's just absolutely wonderful. And but you are totally right. It's really visual because it's a film. So I really had a lot of images in mind, and I thought of the music really as something that doesn't pose too many problems, especially considering how it has to be recorded. And actually it happened something that never had happened to me before. Even at the previous stages, when I read the libretto, I told John, I was reading the libretto and the music, I was listening, I was hearing the music as I was reading it, especially in the aria where Emily is singing. I was reading, I don't know why, the melody was automatically, it came. So that was also a first for me. But really, I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity. And I'm also aware that it's quite exceptional circumstances. So we'll see how it goes in further projects. But it was really a joy to be part of it.
Wow. Well, I just have to say, if that's your first opera, holy smokes, you are really good at this. You should do like 10 more immediately.
I hope.
Everybody who's listening, that's the one to commission right there. Amazing. Thank you so much.
And the wind is at your back now. If you could write under these circumstances, for all this craziness.
Did you know they usually give you like a year to write it? It's amazing.
Don't tell him that. Don't tell him
never
that.
mind.
I want to say hi to all the folks who are saying hi to us on social media right now. We're getting a lot of kudos and congratulations and bravos on the various social channels. So I want to say hi to Ann Carolyn, and I want to say hi to Alan and Kurt and Sean and Sam and Russell and Bran. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for your kind words. We appreciate it very much. In addition to the composers tonight, we have the librettists. And for the uninitiated, the librettist is the person who writes the words after the libretto, the little book, which historically would contain all the words to the opera before titles, so you could see what was being sung. And we have our librettist here tonight. Now, I'm going to ask Deborah, and then I'm going to ask John. But I'd like to know, my question is bipartite. First, these are adaptations of stories that were actually in the Decameron, Boccaccio's 14th century work about people waiting outside of Florence, waiting for the Black Plague to die down so they could go back into town. So they were on lockdown, and they decided to pass time by telling stories like in our frame. So the stories we go to, some are inspired generally by the Decameron, but yours are based on specific stories. So I'd love to know why you chose the story you chose, what attracted it to you. And then I'd like to know, as you adapted it, how much did modern times and how much did the medium, how much did film factor into your craft as you adapted that story? So Debbie.
Sure. Well, basically, when we were given the charge to do this, we were given a set of limits. David said, well, we've got a soprano, we've got a tenor, we've got a bassoon player, we have these elements. We want a comedy. You have 7 minutes turned into 9 minutes. And so basically, we were given the ingredients. And for those of you who don't know the Decameron, it's a 1,000-page book. Here's this. It's pretty heavy to hold. So I basically went through and just sorted the stories into those that could be done with 3 singers, that were a comedy that could be done in 7 minutes. And so that, it was literally a technical decision about how I chose the story. And but then of course I stumbled on this amazing story, and it was, this could happen today. It happens today all the time. It's like, this is 1300s, and there's absolutely nothing new about that. And yet there were all these different elements that I thought, well, we can, like, for example, in the original story, there's this old woman who, hangs out at the church and she's helping people hook up. Well, we don't have old women hanging out at the church anymore. We have these, right? So here's our Yenta, right? We've got Tinder, we've got all of those things. And so I just found that the, that the translation to the contemporary time was really easy. And Matt, I'm sorry, what was your second question? I've forgotten it already.
The filmic aspect of it. I mean, you've got a
yeah.
background. You're a playwright and a musical theater writer. Of course, you're famous for writing Women of Lockerbie. But have you written for film before, and how much did screenplay writing and the shots factor into your libretto?
It was actually the starting point for me, and I've written 2 screenplays on commission in Hollywood. One of them was a comedy, and I really understood. I've written screenplays and I teach screenplays at the university level, so I'm very familiar with that form. But opera is so expansive, and so and comedy is economical, and the power of a shot. A shot can be done quickly and it pace, faster, and it can also cinch the comedy with one shot. So I knew that I had to create a libretto that made room for the operatic music, but also could deliver the comedy with the shots, such as with the cheese plate and the the dips compared to the lobster, that sort of thing. That I knew that there had to be visual jokes running all the way through, and so basically what I did was I wrote an opera screenplay. I put those 2 forms together and handed David and the director and the videographer a screenplay that outlined a lot of different shots. And of course, they came up with their own, so it was really collaborative. It wasn't just, my ideas. There were other fabulous ideas, such as, cleaning his teeth in the hotel room. I wish I had come up with that. That's fabulous. But, the eating of the Chinese food, you can accomplish a lot of story in one shot. And so I knew that was the key to bringing it in 9 minutes.
There was something that happened in the opera that I really thought it actually made me laugh, and it also made me kind of think, which is that you had these asides which were sung, but they were clearly in the head of the person who was singing them.
Right.
And in a real opera, asides are always a little weird because, someone's singing, and of course they're singing opera, so it's perfectly audible by everyone else in the room.
Right.
Whose idea was that, and how did that come out? How did you arrive at that? Whoever thought of that?
Well, I mean, of course, if in the Decameron, every story about a cheating wife or a cheating husband has somebody hiding in a closet. I mean, they're all over, it's all over the Decameron, right? So I knew right away somebody was going into the closet, and that it would be that person's panic moment, and that it would be an internal moment. Is that what you're referring to? Like,
yeah, well, and also at the beginning when they're sitting in bed and they're thinking.
Actually, that was my idea.
Well done, David. Well, both of those spots are.
I just said to our director, "Look, we don't need to sing this. Can't we just think it?"
Mm-hmm.
And he was good with that.
It was really effective.
Yeah.
David, I want to know if there's any director's cut where the Chinese takeout box hits the garbage can.
No. I think the shot that's in there is the one I got closest.
All right. Well, I want to ask the same of John. Why the day that you chose, and again, how did film writing intersect with your libretto writing process? Oh, I think you might be muted, or your mic is not on. Technology grand.
Now?
Yes.
Now, very nice.
Yeah, I basically just process of elimination. I went through the Decameron, and the minute I came on any story that had more than 3 characters, I just quit reading it. But actually, this was really a weird situation because it all started with Sharon. Sharon Apostolou had sung with me in several shows, and she had worked with urban arias before. And I asked Bob, I'd really like to collaborate with her because she learns music so quickly and she's an incredible singer and actress. And he said, sure. And called her up and wanted to see if she wanted to do it. And that's when she revealed that she was actually pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, that's really going to change things. But then when I found the story about this young couple who get caught outside having sex the next morning by the parents, it actually kind of worked, because I felt like even though this was not about a young couple, this is about I don't want to say middle age, but this was a, couple who had been together a while and actually was already pregnant. It spoke to a different phase in their relationship. And it kind of tied into this idea in the pandemic of how no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, we're all having to work together and be thrown together. And so that ended up being an even bigger kind of arch of the story and the libretto for me that I never even saw coming. Because originally, Bob said, we want to do something funny. And I said, okay, well, parents finding their kids having sex outside, that's funny, right? But then it ended up being something much bigger than that. And you see two very different journeys of these two women. And in terms of the cinematic quality, I always think in those terms anyway, even when I'm directing for the stage. So it was a really easy transition for me. But what Deborah said is correct. The comedy and pacing is so much more specific. And so I had that clearly in mind from the very beginning when I chose the story.
Very nice. Very nice. And it was great to see, both companies have put some behind the scenes photos and videos and things on social media over the past several weeks. And to watch the processes was delightful. And there were drone shots in your piece, Urban Arias. Who flew the drone?
Paul Piers, our artistic administrator, had
Oh!
one, and you're not allowed to use them in DC, where he lives, but we filmed it in Virginia, so we could. And there is, so I kept saying to John, we've got this thing. Can you figure out how to use it somewhere? And so we did at the end with Emily getting out of the car and all that stuff.
It's a great shot. That's what and because we've gone from dark to from night to day.
Right.
Satisfying when you see, and that's, boy, that location is gorgeous.
Oh,
so
yeah.
when you see the shot and all the flowers bursting, which seems to speak to the story and the situation, that there's suddenly all this beautiful foliage bursting out. Very, very satisfying. And congratulations, Sharon and Ryan.
Thank you.
And they'll be fictionally congratulated by the cast at the beginning of next week, because then we had to go, oh wait, we got to rewrite the frame for the baby too.
Yeah, fantastic. I really want to hear from these singers, actually. Sharon and Ryan and Kate and David and Emily, of course. I don't even know where to go first. This has to be unlike anything you've ever done in your life. But you are all such pros. You make it seem like you've done this over and over and over again. How about this? Can each of you think of a moment where you suddenly realized you had to do something differently?
You mean like lip syncing to myself?
Sure.
I've done that before.
How about singing with two tenors? That's never happened.
I'm so sorry you had to do that. That's the worst thing. Oh, you poor creature. Oh.
So both pieces were recorded, the audio was recorded completely before anything was filmed? I was going to ask about that, actually, because they're both so beautifully recorded, and that doesn't happen, when you're on your iPhone. It's a process. So can you talk about that at all, or anything
Sure.
you want to talk about regarding singing? I want to hear it.
No, we recorded in a large church in Moorhead, and where we could be about 20 feet apart during the recording. And our bassoon player was also our recording engineer. So he supplied all the equipment. And then, as Michael mentioned, he layered in the violinist and the next day, and then the percussionist the next day. So when we got to the filming, we'd never actually heard the violin. It's like, oh, that's what it sounds like.
I will say it's pretty great to be able to lip sync a high B flat like this instead of actually having to sing it.
Yeah, all the sopranos.
Several high C's, so I'm with you, sister.
Yeah, your jaw drops. How are they doing that with that mouth position? Emily, looks like you've got something there. What was it like?
Well, I mean, we decided to record in the closet, like so many of us have been doing over this time period. And we all use the same microphone. So, we have different microphones in our houses, but I think that may have helped a little bit with getting the overall sound quality. But, I've said before on working on these projects, where I was in March as far as technology and where I am now is just, the learning curve is pretty steep, but I'm glad I know what I know now. But my goodness, we'll all be so thrilled, to have the chance to sing with each other on a stage again. But it's so wonderful to know how to do this in the meantime. And that's because of people like you who have, come up with these creative projects for us so that we can still feel like performers and just, navigate the new terrain as best we can and learn as we go. And so I'm very grateful for that.
Sharon and Ryan, we haven't heard from you on this.
Well, as Emily was saying, we all recorded our pieces separately. Actually, even Sharon and I both recorded our own tracks separately, working as each other's engineer at the time. And as Emily said, I think one of the nice things, we did use the same brand of microphone that we talked about way early. That way, at least we had the same sort of resonance and the same sort of, I don't know what you call it, stability of the mic or whatever that is. But, and then we learned lessons, as Emily's saying, we learned some lessons too in the process of, we were listening to the wonderfully pre-recorded track that Bob and Mark were able to provide us in our ears, singing to basically a
carpet,
with
a mic in front of it,
and rather than doing it a different way. So now, like when she did the frames, she recorded the frames a little bit differently than the way that we recorded this, because we learned throughout that process. So when we're ready to do the next one, we're going to be much better at it.
It's crazy when you spend 10, 15, 20 years performing professionally on a stage. And then, so you feel like I'm a professional performer. Like I have degrees in this. I've worked all over the world. Like I got this. And then you're like, oh my God.
What are we doing?
What are we doing? Horrifying. GarageBand, Final Cut. Like what is happening? And so it's definitely humbling to say the least. I kept messaging my friends that do like primarily musical theater and film and TV. And I was like, this is exhausting. Like, how do you guys do this all the time? And they're like, oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, I don't know. We did all of our filming in one weekend. And I don't know about you guys up in Fargo, but we were exhausted. Like the sort of mental aspect of it was like after we got married. Like
it was just like we woke up on Sunday morning. We're like, oh my God.
We're just drained from doing cuts or scenes over and over again, trying to find the marks, making sure. Bob was wonderful to come down and make sure that we were lip syncing correctly to our tracks.
Conducting some of us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that button doesn't go off.
But yeah, so there were a lot of little things that will never be seen by the audience, when it comes to even like helpful sniffs on an upbeat that Bob might give it. There we go.
He's good at that, isn't he? Yes.
Very.
What we found out was that videographers like to work early. Our calls were at 7:30 a.m. both days.
Oh,
and that's not an operatic start time. So I did that. We actually filmed the hotel stuff first, and it's weird. I don't know about you guys. It's weird working out of order. We did we do all the scenes in the dining room, and then go up to the bedroom, and then do the hallway, and then coming down the stairs, and had to do it multiple times because you have to have different shots for the camera to see different faces. It was 2 solid days of filming for that 10 minutes of opera.
We've got some more hellos from internet land here. Peter says g'day from Australia, where it must be 6, 7, 8, 9 in the morning and upside down. So hello.
It's Paul, but yeah.
Paul.
It's Paul Pierce.
Paul, it's Paul, the drone pilot.
Oh, it is. And we've got Maddie in Minnesota. Has a question here. does anybody think there's a chance that these shows could be performed live?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Matt, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, both of them.
Some of the early intention was that, we were trying to make these pieces short enough and do them in such a way, and like, could there be an economy of cast so that this entire thing could be done in one pull? And that is still possible, although now when you watch it, people have embraced the filmic aspect of it so much, which is wonderful. I mean, the form should follow the function, and vice versa. So it's great that we have these pieces that are so filmic that probably at a glance they couldn't be done on stage, but they could, and I certainly hope that they will be.
Well, that's something that I keep thinking about. And Matt, you've heard me you've heard me go on and on about things like this, but there's in every Puccini opera, there's a passage where nobody's singing and something interesting is happening, and he just threw somebody the librettist's arm behind their back and said, "You know what? This is going to be about a shepherd for about 10 minutes." You know what I mean? Like, and you're always like, kind of, what is that about? Isn't this an opera? Aren't people supposed to be singing? And yet, there's something really satisfying in these pieces about watching something happen on the screen and nobody's singing, and the music is doing a bunch of work. And that's something I think is really wonderful about opera, is that the music has to do some of the heavy lifting of the drama, right? Otherwise, it would be a musical or a play, right? And I just wonder whether the things that we are discovering as we're writing and performing these pieces, we will figure out how to apply on stage. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I would just say that I think that's a disservice to musical theater. I think the Dream Ballet does a lot of heavy lifting in Oklahoma.
And that's getting pretty close to an opera scene right there. Yeah. Good. You got me, Bob. You got me.
Peter, I don't know. Everybody knows opera singers can't act. So.
Okay.
If you ask anybody in the theater world.
Opera singing, I mean, the scale of acting that happens in an opera, like sometimes there are only two man-made things that can be seen from space, the Great Wall of China and opera singers acting. But it's in a big house, and it's over an enormous orchestra, and it's in these big scale grand passions and historical things. And here everyone has this camera inches from their face. So I think it's fair to say that there was a question about whether or not the folks could settle things down a bit for camera work, because opera is so demanding. It is difficult to sing at the level at which all of you sing, and also find time to learn how to act on film. Like, it's a possibility that none of you have done that, have acted on that scale. So I have to say that I opened files like, what's it gonna be? And when it was authentic and delightful and warm and human, that was a very pleasant thing to discover.
Question: how was the acting style different for you all? Had you done anything like this before, where it had to be so focused? And how was that for you, doing it on the screen versus in a theater?
I think it's still all about intent, and you just have to use a different vocabulary for expressing that. And there's also so much that you can do with your eyes, and it's like, how can I make that come through? And the nice thing is, now we have that vocabulary that we can use when we're back on stage, and there's probably a lot more that we can do in a subtle way, because I'm nothing if not subtle. There's a lot of things that we can hopefully glean from this. But yeah, it's the intent is still there, and it comes through hopefully in the singing. The weird part for me with the lip syncing is that it's not all happening at the same time. We when we're singing, the emotion is coming through the voice and through your eye, and it's all happening simultaneously. And when you're doing it for film and lip syncing, you have to try to suddenly make it all. You have to do emotional syncing as well, and so that's an interesting exercise. And it does help, when you sing along, I think, and you're actually singing when you're lip syncing, because I think that helps the emotion come back through again. But I find that as long as the intent is there, you can scale it down for the camera.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking at this going, oh, I should have done that differently. Oh gosh, I wish I had something there.
Well, I'd like to ask John about this issue as well. And Monica from Houston has given a shout out to John. She's a big John De Los Santos fan. And Houstonites, stay tuned, because next week, one of the premieres is my Opera in the Heights in Houston. And it is a gorgeous and sexy, it's a concert aria, 1-act opera music video that's going to knock your socks off. So Houstonites, stay tuned. But Monica says she's a big fan of your work, and she wanted to know more about the intersection of film directing and opera directing. So with regard to scale, or like think your shepherding of the singers through the piece, what was required?
I think that the most difficult thing is that in order to create the sounds in opera, you have to really exaggerate. Everything is huge. Your mouth you basically have to unlock your jaw. And that's really, really unnatural looking on film. And so what I did was I just told the entire cast, just take it down, take it down, take it down. Let your eyes, the work that's already in the score. And honestly, we got to it really quick. The lip syncing was harder than the acting. That's what was really, really difficult, because again, we went into this knowing that we had 3 incredible artists who were not just great singers, they were great actors, and they could evoke so much. And to be honest, it was kind of great to have a real husband and wife, so we didn't have to fake any of the sexual chemistry. It was already there, so that was a big plus. But
because they've been faking sexual chemistry for years.
I know, right? But yeah, no, I mean, again, there are operas that require more subtlety on stage and some that require less. And so it was just another extension of that kind of work that I'm used to. But this cast, from the very first thing we shot was the outdoor scene of the 2 of them lying naked on the bedding outside. And then we just jumped right in. But the learning curve was really, really short, and everybody just kind of dove in. I think that what Emily said is right. We are all, whether we are an instrumentalist, a singer, director, producer, whatever, this experience and working cinematically with classical music has really emboldened us with a whole new bag of tricks that we're going to take to us when we get back to live performance.
Very nice, very nice. And there is some kudos here about the innovation and creativity. Carol, who watched on Vimeo, said, thank you for taking us on this ride of innovation and creativity. John in Pennsylvania says the works were relevant and engaging. So thanks for giving us those smiles, and also for addressing our current moment. And with regard to COVID protocols and getting people in the same place, I've watched The Roost a few times now, and it's like that Sixth Sense thing where you watch it again to see if Bruce Willis really wasn't in the scenes with other people. But Emily's never actually with them, is she? But it sure as hell seems like, I mean, the cast gels, not just the 2 lovers who are right up against each other, but all 3 of them have a relationship. And it really took me until now, after watching the edits and title things here for a couple of weeks, to realize that, I mean, how much did you guys interact with Emily at all in the process?
They were never in the same place shooting.
Wow.
Yeah, that was all, and it was written that way because we wanted to be careful.
Mm-hmm. And how about intimacy stuff, right? There's all kinds of undressing and cuddling and falling down and so forth, which looks like it was probably a wonderful combination of mortifying and delightful. Fargo, how was the intimacy factor in the rehearsals and the filming?
Kate, go ahead.
It was great. It's pretty wonderful because I've worked with Josh before, and I've worked with David several times in the capacity that he's my boss, and also that we've worked on stage. It was always very comfortable, and I was the only out-of-towner who had quarantined ahead of time. So I never felt unsafe. It always felt completely comfortable and very fun.
We took advantage of the fact that back when we filmed this, North Dakota had very few cases. That has changed a lot, shall we say. But back when we filmed this, North Dakota was at There's like less than 100 cases. So we all felt comfortable, and the fact that we weren't singing operatic consonants into each other's faces made a big difference.
And I also wrote the screenplay and the libretto with a series of shots that could be done safely. So.
Very nice. Very clever.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I was
Peter.
going to jump in and ask, this is usually a question you ask at the end, but I want to make sure that we bring them in again. Mark and Michael, what are your next projects? What are your next pieces that you're working on? Yeah, Mark, go first. What are you up to?
Well, now I'm revising a series of like 4 songs that I wrote. That actually I wrote this before the opera, but I'm revising them because they will be premiered in Romania and in Barcelona. And it's like a really exciting project. It's based on a book by Svetlana Alexievich, that she's a Belarusian writer. She won the Nobel Prize in 2015. And that's actually the work that got me started with voice. And I fell in love with voice right after starting it. So I'm very excited. It's for mezzo soprano and chamber orchestra.
Oh.
And we'll see how it goes.
Oh, it's going to go great. How beautiful. Michael, what are you working on?
I'm about to go into rehearsals next week for a large version of Speed Dating tonight at NYU. It's a remote production. And then I go to a live socially distanced production in Amarillo of my opera RSBE, which this will be the second production. And so second productions, as you know, as a composer, are really almost more important than the first production.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the one you really got to have. And Amarillo has been very good to me about second productions. And this is an opera that can be done socially distanced. And so even though there's a cast of about 15 people, we've cut all the ensemble singing. I have this gadget that I actually can use to simulate some of the ensemble singing. And then the rehearsal schedule is like nobody is in the same room until, piano tech or something like that. So it's hopefully going to work out.
And the same for John and Debbie. What are you up to?
Well, I have an opera that will open at Glimmerglass in the summer. That is written with Alexandra Vrebeloff. So we're going into workshop in November on that. And then when the Ford's Theater in DC opens, dates TBA, they will open with a play that I wrote. The poster is right behind me. It's about great singer Marian Anderson, the great opera singer Marian Anderson, and Albert Einstein. And that will open when the theater reopens, whenever that will be.
John, what's on deck for you?
Yeah, so I was set to have a world premiere this fall that obviously has been canceled, but I'm very lucky that Arizona Opera has decided to do the world premiere of my piece with Clint Borzoni, The Copper Queen. It's going to be turned into a feature-length 90-minute film. So we're going to be shooting that in January in Arizona, in Phoenix, and then it'll hopefully be released, I think, in the spring. So very happy about that, and also going to be working with American Opera Project on another project with Clint Borzoni, The Christmas Spider. We're going to write a new holiday piece so that people can give Amal a rest.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Online, Bob says the core of these pandemic stories is intimacy, and intimacy is opera's sweet spot, a perfect convergence of subject and genre and brilliant performances. So congratulations to everyone from Bob. This is
it's a great one for Mark. Bill Munson.
Yes. Bill says that he loves the piano part in The Roost. And he wants to know if it was inspired by any particular composers. He thought he heard Brahms and Liszt and Schumann. What inspired the music, Mark?
Well, I love all of these composers, but I think that all the influences, they might play at a subconscious level. I really was inspired first and foremost by the libretto. And it's true that there's some little like wings, but regarding the Decameron, so there's some place with 5 and 4 because it has to do with what story it is in the book and to what day it belongs. So there are these hidden symbols in the score. It's fine. It's not necessary to know that, but I thought it was funny, and I agree with John here. I think he also put some of this stuff in the movie.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear that sort of thing. I love that's my jam. Emily, I keep thinking about something that you said that has made a big impression on me. I was thinking about, you were saying how you sing this and then you film it, and how the emotionality and the connection to the character is always through the voice. And so that if you separate that and you do the voice here and then the acting here, it's like you've broken some kind of stream that you have to reconnect somehow. I think that's amazing thought. I've never thought of that before. That's so fascinating.
Well, we work so hard, you know, so much of learning to sing and act is about coordinating multiple things. You know, one of my choir directors, Renee Clausen, said, you know, there's a reason why, you know, your voice box is halfway between your brain and your heart. So, you know, you're coordinating that to begin with, and this and your whole body. And when it's all working together, you know, great things happen. And so that coordination is, you know, and you're constantly relearning that and reevaluating that. And so this was just learning a different coordinate. It's, you know, it's a little bit, you know, rubbing your stomach's head, and I can do it with both hands. But it really was a very interesting exercise. And I feel that I've learned a lot about my thought process and making it all fit back together. And I think that's going to make me a better performer in the future, being able to look at things separately and then putting them back together. And I don't know, it was an interesting experience, but I was also surrounded by people whom I knew that I could trust, so that if I was doing anything that was too out there, they would rein me back in and go for another shot. So that helped too. I think that having good, honest people whose opinions can be trusted when you're trying to something new makes a big difference as well.
Yeah, I mean, that really cannot be overstated. Like when Matt and I work with Bob, we know each other so well. And when Bob says, "You guys, can you rethink the title of this piece?" We have to go, huh? Because we trust Bob, you know, and building relationships can happen really, I think, sometimes easier in a smaller company than in a big machine. You can really get to know a person's style and how they work and build a relationship. I would love to give Bob and David a chance to just sort of share what makes their particular company special. Maybe we'll start with David. Like, David, what makes Fargo-Moorhead Opera, like, how are you connected to your community? How are you different from the other companies? Give me the elevator pitch. Come on.
Elevator pitch. Well, I think probably we've been around longer than anybody else. This is our 52nd season.
Wow.
And we started out as a very community, like literally nobody outside the community opera company back in 1968. And so we are really connected to our community. Fargo is not a large place. We have only about 230,000 people in the entire region. And so we are integrated with our young artist program going into the schools. And then as of late, I have really tried to broaden our audience's tastes with the 21st century opera. We also did our very first Baroque opera 2 or 3 years ago. It's a challenge, certainly. I think any company director would tell you that. It's a challenge to keep the boat afloat. But especially in a small community like this, where we are the only thing around. There's no other opera company that's less than a 4-hour drive away. And interestingly, Sarah Lawrence with Lyric Opera the North and I have collaborated before, but Duluth is a 5-hour drive from us. So we're kind of isolated here. So we have to create our own art and our own opportunities here. And the community has supported us for 52 years, and we certainly hope they continue to. And I loved this project because it gave us something to do and something to continue to show the community during this time when we can't perform live.
Well, I have to say, you know, that isolation, I don't know whether it helps, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Your product is fantastic. This piece came off so well. You know, I'm sure that your hometown crew is just crowing about this. Fantastic.
Really happy with it. Yep. Yep.
Bob, tell us, same deal, same spiel.
Sure. I think what makes Urban Arias special is the idea, or some might say the gimmick. It's unique among opera companies around. When I was thinking what I might want to do with a company that I would start after, you know, having been conducting for a while, I realized that there was a real need for work that approached people where they are. And I thought, what are the barriers to people addressing, to people embracing opera that we might address? And I would say length and language are two big ones. So if you shorten it to a feature film length, or even extremely short like this, and you do it in English, and more, as much as that, doing relevant subjects, that I thought was such a wonderful opportunity here with this production, was that we were able to write about now. I was nervous when we were talking about this in May that it wasn't going to be relevant anymore in October. Well, yeah, anyway. So I think this will be relevant all the way through next summer. So that's a real mission of ours too, is to try to serve the operatic art form by doing what it has always done best, which is telling people stories in the contemporary world that they're living in. So whether it's Traviata or, you know, you name it, you know, Marriage of Figaro, telling about the times that people are living in and the events that they will recognize. And that's been a lot of fun for me too, when I commission stuff or when I choose stuff to do, to find people that are interested in writing for now and that don't necessarily have their sights set on what will be famous after they're dead, but instead focusing on what's important now, because those are the stories we want to hear.
Oh, it's great. Wonderful.
You know, Bob, I don't know if you've ever been accused of being a cockeyed optimist, but now there's been a few instances wherein you've said, oh no, perhaps this piece won't stay fresh because this particular societal ill will soon be all cleared up. And it never seems...
Maybe I'm an optimist, maybe I'm just a worrier. But yeah, I'm very sorry to have been wrong on this one, but you know, there it is.
I just realized that Michael Ching's background is the house from Dinner for Three.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I also want to.
David's house.
It's David's house?
It's David's house?
Nice place, David. Wow.
Yeah, we basically kicked my husband out of the house for a couple of days to do all the filming.
Did you already have that lobster in the fridge? Because that was a nice grocery setup.
You know, it was just serendipity. Yes. No, everything was purchased, and it was fun to get that shot set up with a GoPro in the refrigerator.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Of course, Deborah didn't do you any favors with her list of groceries because they were,
But I did send David an email. I said, so this is what I want to put in the lyrics. Can you do this? And then we had a conversation about how you can make couscous look like caviar. Did you have real caviar? Yeah, you put like soy sauce and couscous and it looks like caviar.
Yeah.
So they said, that's okay. What you've got is okay. We can do it.
It was great. We had to fake the oysters a bit. And let me tell you, canned oysters stink to high heaven.
Oh.
3 hours into a shoot.
Yeah.
Glorious.
Oh no.
And I loved Kate using the shells as the castanets.
Yeah.
It was a lot of seafood for the see how you'd have to do some workarounds.
We have some nice comments coming in. I just want to throw them in here. Anne said, a few minutes after the end of the roost, my daughter said, Mom, what was she touching? His private part? LOL. John says, I love these talkbacks. They're informative. Thanks for everyone's contributions to the art form. Kurt asked, did everyone sing along with the track while recording the video? I think Emily said that she did, right? Did the rest of you sing along, or were you literally lip syncing?
We were literally lip syncing.
we sang along for the most part, but sort of like marked it, a lot of it an octave down.
Uh-huh.
Like, I think the disconnect, like watching it, knowing where it sits in my voice and seeing like a perfectly calm and totally normal face.
Something that Emily had said about, having done this a few times is that you see it when she sings her aria, and I don't know if she was actually singing because we weren't there, but there's a little bit of like when she gets off of a phrase, you can tell that she ended her breath. And that's something that I noticed if I were to do this all over again, would be sort of what I would consider my natural breath movements of ending a phrase a little, like waiting for the next breath to come in. And that's the sort of thing to me that makes my own performance look artificial in that sense, because I'm learning, like if I were to do this again, I would probably sing out more, knowing that they weren't going to use the audio.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you can also see the vibrato.
Yeah,
exactly.
Emily sang it. I was there. She sang it.
Makes sense. And it
make
shows.
us all look bad.
I will say that David and I had a nice laugh because neither of us were singing full voice, and we had to end a phrase on goodbye on a high note, and we were looking into each other's mouths, and both of our tongues went bye. It's like, well, here we go.
We have a suggestion here in the chat that someone submit the entire piece to a state film festival. I mean, really, this is a kind of operatic film festival, isn't it? So Albert asks, has anyone been involved in the filming of a stage production, and were you able to apply anything that you learned from that process? Have you had a, it used to be stuff was filmed pretty professionally. Operas were frequently filmed that way. Anybody been involved in a project like that?
I did a couple of live from the Met things, but it was just literally, they basically filmed the live performance. So there was nothing different for us.
I think it's really interesting the way that they filmed Hamilton over a bunch of days, and there's a bunch of really close shots. They clearly planned it out. It wasn't just like one wide shot of the whole show. It's interesting that we're all sort of thinking along those lines.
My experience, we recorded Brokeback Mountain at Madrid.
Oh, sure.
And it was the same sort of situation that David's describing. It was multiple performances, and they just edit it together without us really doing anything different. So in that situation, it wasn't close-ups that we were directed to change.
Well, I think we're very close to pulling this plane in for a landing. So are there any parting statements, that anything you folks would like to mention, things that we haven't been asked about that you feel are worth mentioning?
I think one thing that's interesting for us is the fact that after the premiere, it's not over. The video is going to be up until the end of the year. So encourage your friends to buy tickets, everybody out there, and watch it again and again and see what else you discover. I think that's, we're kind of used to having an ephemeral art form where it's in the moment and it's gone. But now this is not gone. So it's kind of cool in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I would just want to thank all of our supporters and our donors for sticking with us during this really weird time. It's been really humbling to have everyone continue to continue to donate and buy tickets and all that stuff, even though it's, we're not performing live. So it's you guys who are keeping this going, and I really appreciate it.
I would echo that. It's a huge challenge and a huge, it's just amazing that people are sticking by us and keeping at least the small stages alive around the country.
All right.
I want to say thank you to Matt, just real quick, to Matt and Peter, because even though these were just short, tiny things, this was one of the most challenging things I have ever had to do. And I think that everybody involved, at least with the Roost, and I'm sure the other companies too, have all really, really grown into themselves in this really terrible time and learned a lot, not just about ourselves as artists, but as human beings working together. Because I think that the experience that this company had coming together in this really scary time and laughing and enjoying and making something beautiful together is something we're not going to forget. And so bravo to both of you for really coming up with this really brilliant conceit. And that wasn't just about you. It was about bringing together a large collective of people to work together.
Well, thank you very much, John. And I hope that all of us have passed on sort of the joy and the sanity that it's hard to imagine that this project could bring sanity. But I think that, you know, this was a lovely anchor for all of us in this mad, mad time. And I hope that we pass some of the joy on to this audience that continues to tune in. I keep saying tuning in, which I'm sure makes me sound very strange and very old. I hope you're enjoying our motion.
You are.
This is true.
I think that it's wonderful to see so much optimism on this Zoom. People are optimistic. We're doing things. We're learning things, right? We're growing as artists. What a wonderful thing. And I've been reading for another project. I've been reading biographies of Handel all summer. And just hearing about the opera crash when Italian opera fell out of favor in London. And Handel had to completely retool everything and write oratorios, which he basically invented. And everything he felt like doing from opera, he just did in the oratorios. And then everything that wasn't working, he threw it out and tried something new. And that's happened lots of times in opera. You know, Gluck did it. The Florentine Camerata did it. And we're on one of these awesome inflection points where the lessons that we learned doing the last thing, some of them are going to work. Some of them are not going to work, and we're going to make new art and new exciting things happen coming out of this. And I'm fired up. This is fantastic to see work like this, and thank you all for being a part of it. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you to these wonderful artists tonight. Thank you for all the folks working the back end to collect these questions and pass them on to us on screen. So Aki and Brennan and Maria and Sarah, who are all helping out and working all the boops and beeps all night. Thank you very much to you. Thank you to you, the viewers. And please do tune in next week for episode 3, So Noble a Heart. That is 3 atmospheric, evocative, and very important works. Yeah, you're going to get the frame and 3 operas next week from Milwaukee Opera Theater, from Opera in the Heights, and from an opera theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Thanks so much for coming. We'll see you next time.